understanding from the media is that the criteria for when they consider a source as a valid source, when it's been proven to be lying on you know, multiple occasions, why do they keep seeking the same sources? Is it because of lack of sources, or they just have no one else to? But
well, if you look at their method of battle, okay, the idea, and it's true throughout Islamic warfare, when they're going against an enemy, they will battle to the point where they chip away and chip away and chip away at their enemy, to where their whole esteem, their whole ability to stand is weakened. The idea is to chip away until you subdue the enemy. That is the mentality. That is the attitude. So whether or not the issues are true or not, the idea is to hurt the enemy in any possible way, to subdue them. That's what you're dealing with here.
Well, all of Palestinian society is involved in conflict.
Of course, yes.
The overwhelming majority, outside of actually being a soldier with mandatory duty, the overwhelming majority of Israeli society is not involved in the conflict, especially the media. Now, I mean, you have people on both sides. There might be, there are journalists that have invested interest, in presenting a more, Israeli point of view narrative and so forth, and that's totally okay as long as the facts are there. I mean, everybody has a gatekeeper around filter what news is news and so forth, but at least the minimum requirement is to have factually based information going on, and not crap that have to be constantly corrected or goes uncorrected, which Reuters and AP and AFP and the rest of them, just hey, it's out there, it's gone by. Next, old news, and the list just goes on and on and on. So the propaganda wing of helping the Palestinians along has to be taken into account for your information. And I don't really damn people when they've got these really stupid ideas about the conflict. And it is, in my opinion, it's stupid. To compare both sides is basically the same, and they're just fighting in the sandlot. They need to, just be forced to come to an agreement, and there you have it. No, sorry, that's not the case. It's just not the case.
Right, and the thing is that remember that you have, again, and I've said this before, that you're dealing with two different mentalities and two different philosophies between the two peoples. What an agreement means to Israel is not the same thing as what an agreement means to the Palestinians. And the duration of such an agreement, whether it be temporary or enduring and long-lasting, again, you have two different sides of the fence that have a different definition of these terms. So you cannot force an agreement with that type of difference. It's impossible. It's an impossible goal to have somebody trying to force you into an agreement. Sure, you'll make the agreement, it will last temporarily, and again, the conflict will resume over and over again. You cannot force, you can't change people,
You got any opinions about what happened with Netanyahu and Obama coming in? All of a sudden, there's an apology heading towards Turkey. What's your take?
Well, Ken, I think you know my opinion on that, but I'll tell you. Basically, I do not see Obama as a trustworthy partner with Israel at all. I do not think that Israel should have ever apologized in any way to Turkey, as there were investigations regarding that incident that proved that Israel was more than correct in its procedure and actions on the Mavi Mavara. And basically, I feel that when you make a public apology such as that, you are telling the Islamic world that you are weak. It's a mistake on the part of Bibi Netanyahu. I'm very disappointed in that, and I was really shocked and very, very disappointed to see that. But on the other side, there is the issue is that Israel. This is another example of the extent in which Israel will go in the interest of peace. So there's two ways of looking at that response. Israel bends over backwards in the interest of peace time and time and time again, without recognition for those efforts. And we're not seeing the same thing in reciprocation from the other side. Israel is having to apologize for, it's like a bully in a schoolyard that is beating up on a kid, and the kid who's being bullied has to apologize. I find that to be absolutely reprehensible, that anyone would expect Israel to apologize for an incident that occurred where you're supposed to bring peaceful activists onto Israeli soil, but your ship is loaded with weapons. This is a problem for me.
Alex, this is another case, concerning we were talking just a while ago about the media, how the media reports things,
right.
What actually is later on. The Mavi Marmara, it was a Turkish regime operation. For whatever the reasons that they designed it, was it to cause a breach in relations with the state of Israel because of it?
Exactly correct, Ken. Yes, exactly. And also, when you don't obey orders, when you don't obey orders to go to the port of Ashdod, you're told you need to go to this port, and they refuse to obey these orders, and they refused to. When Israelis ascended onto that ship, they were met with armed people who were armed. They weren't met with peaceful activists. They were met with armed personnel that attacked Israeli soldiers and wounded them.
Right.
And Israel was completely justified to board that ship. There was no mistake that Israel made. The investigation showed that. And in the same token, to apologize for an act that you were justified in on the part of an Israeli prime minister, I'm disappointed. Yes, I am.
Right. Zamira, can you respond to, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing their name correctly, but Hatham, he has some comments in the text chat.
Yes, I see. Haitham is saying, what a liar, what weapon. Israeli army pirated and searched the ships. What weapons did they find? Actually, we have video footage of the soldiers being attacked with weapons. So it's undeniable proof. And as far as lying, the Palestinians are probably the greatest perpetrators of lying that we have seen through the media and through every action. So to say that Israel has lied when thorough investigations have been made and when there is true evidence to support the Israeli side on the Mavi Mavara is almost a ridiculous, it's completely ridiculous response.
Yeah, this is a travesty of justice.
You cannot show undeniable evidence and then be told that you are lying about that evidence. That is clear evidence. It has been reviewed and re-reviewed and proven. So there is no lie here.
So, for example, Alex, another situation that, for example, with the media, show how ignorant many of them are. Very few of them have any understanding about international law.
Correct. That's a main issue, Ken.
That's the main issue. For example, the Mavi Marmara, as soon as it left port, or as soon as it was registered to its destination, automatically, by default, made it a target for an operation against it to keep it from breaking the blockade, the legal blockade.
Right.
Absolutely correct. Absolutely correct.
All this nonsense about um, being on the open sea. You can't touch a ship in international waters. That's bull crap. As soon as that ship's register was made known that they were going to break the blockade, the Israelis could have disabled that ship. Could have commandeered that ship. Could have been in the Indian Ocean.
Mm-hmm.
But there you have it. You talk with. I have plenty of instances with the media here in Finland and also abroad. And you ask them about resolutions. People don't know a chapter 6 from a chapter 7. UN Security Council.
And responding to Haytham's other comment about a stick is a weapon, a rock is a weapon. It can cause death. A stick is a weapon, a gun is a weapon. Weapons can be made out of anything. So to say that a gun is only a weapon and a stick is not a weapon, or a rock is not the weapon, or a missile is not the weapon, is foolish.
Yeah, it is. Just recently, the woman that crashed into a truck, her window was smashed with a rock, and her kids, critically injured and in the hospital. That was from a rock.
Correct. From a rock.
They can kill you. A woman being stoned to death. A rock is a weapon. Believe me.
Correct.
Yeah.
Stoning to death. Hi, fam. Like I said, it doesn't matter what the ship was transporting. When it tried to make way to the legal anti-weapons blockade, it was a legal target to be taken care of by the Israeli military. It's completely irrelevant what it was carrying. The intention of it to break the blockade was enough to have it stop, regardless of where it was. That's international law. And you will make note that no UN resolution would even come close to condemning them out of basic international law. So you can whine, complain, and kick your feet, whatever you want, but it's not going to change this thing.
Absolutely correct.
Right.
Absolutely correct, Ken.
It doesn't matter if it was carrying weapons, it was carrying Kool-Aid, it was carrying kids' diapers. Oh, I'm whining. Okay. Well, okay.
Yeah.
The thing is what's a very difficult situation too is when facts are presented on the table, those facts are questioned even after they have been proven and reproven. So what else is there to do? You're dealing with a mentality that will not accept facts that are proven on the table.
Zamira, she's still saying that Gaza is under siege. By who? Who is it under siege? Hamas itself? Or maybe it's the Egyptians that control the other border with Gaza. Huh? How about that border with Gaza? Israel needs to end the siege of Gaza. Well, Israel needs to end many things.
Israel is free to in its own
terrorism.
country. Exactly. You're dealing with a mentality that will not accept the fact that Israelis are free to build on their own land and they're free to live on their own land. And that's the way it is.
Israel needs to end racism and apartheid. Well,
what apartheid when you have a voice in the government? How is this possible? How is it possible that there are many...
Wait a minute. But why is it that the Palestinian Authority doesn't want any Jews in Judea and Samaria or in Gaza?
Exactly. What is apartheid? We welcome them into our land. We welcome them into our land. Israelis work side by side with Palestinians in many occasions. So how is it that the opposite is not true for the Palestinian side? They are calling us apartheid? Please. Where is this coming from?
Find your puke bucket, empty yourself. Racist.
It doesn't have to be so undignified that you go into a conversation and you can't be. You resort to this type of behavior. See, this is the mentality. You can't keep yourself at a level. You cannot keep yourself at a level of professionalism and understanding that we are, speaking to the public and on a public forum here, and we're resorting to name calling and insulting people in a chat.
Samira, I remember one time, and I was when the organization of the Islamic Conference had Isanoglu came to Finland, and while waiting for him outside of the building where he was going to be speaking, I was having a conversation with a guy, an elderly gentleman in his 60s, and we're talking about the Palestine-Israel situation, right? And he was very dignified. He was talking, very nicely, and then he got to figure out that I'm not in his side.
Well, so that's the way it goes.
He started getting abusive, and he was very intelligent sounding. And so then I asked him. I said, "Excuse me, you're saying that Israel needs to get out of the West Bank, quote unquote West Bank, right, or Judea and Samaria, as I call it." And I said, "Excuse me, but UN Security Council Resolution 242 demands that the situation be handled by negotiations leading to an agreement between all sides, and then there'll be some withdrawal." He blew up. He absolutely blew up. And he was talking to me about international law the whole time, right? And then I put it back to him and I said, "Excuse me, but 242 is a Chapter 6 resolution. By definition, it means that Israel's presence in the West Bank is completely legal. Occupation, if you want to use the word occupation, does not denote anything either that it's illegal or legal. There's no legality or illegality connected with the term."
Correct, and again we go back to why is Jordan not taking responsibility for their people? Why are the rest of the Arab nations not taking responsibility for their people? Why it must be that Israel must endure this day in and day out? That's the question that I pose. Why is Israel responsible for this situation when it is not Israel's fault? It was not decided by Israel. It was decided by other entities, the British particularly. So why is Israel the point of contention for the Palestinians constantly engaging in every form of terrorism, from verbal to physical terrorism against Israelis?
It's the Arabs bear a great responsibility, and if the international community refuses.
And you notice her answer is to leave, because she knows that she cannot debate. Yeah. She knows that she cannot have an answer to this question, and she cannot have an answer to your facts. See, this is the partner that we deal with, Alex. I will explain very clearly, and also, Kenneth, you already know, is that you're dealing with a partner that when you put facts on the table, as Kenneth has so eloquently done about international law, and when I directed a question that is a complete valid question, the answer is adios. Yeah. And that is also in the level of negotiations with the Israeli and Palestinian leaders. This is often an answer that Israel receives. They will not come to the negotiating table. Israel has more than many times come to the negotiating table in the interest of peace, and also made major concessions, all kinds of concessions, in the interest of peace, and we have not seen anything on the other side. What have they done on the other side in the interest of an enduring, long-lasting peace?
Yeah.
Nothing. Nothing. Nada.
Mm-hmm.
So, but that's the problem Israel faces. That you've got a side that is disingenuous with its real aims, who wants their destruction. Even though it sounds so farcical for many people, how can they actually think that Israel can be destroyed. But one thing that the Arabs do have in their favor is patience. And when you look at what they've done over the last 50, 60 years, keep moving the fence post closer and closer to their goals, you realize that they're very serious in their aims, and now we're close, to achieving them because of Israel's reluctance to commit suicide. So they constantly keep changing the dialogue to where now that if you noticed in the last few years, it's now the single state solution, the binational or single state solution. That's the answer now because
Well, remember, let's take a look at this two-state solution. Let's look at the two-state solution here as what is defined on their side versus the Israeli side. A two-state solution on the Israeli side would be to have a peaceful neighbor that works side by side and maybe separate and having a different culture, but living peacefully side by side. On the other side, the one-state solution means all Palestinian, no Israelis, no Jews at all. Okay? And if they come into the other nation, then that nation is going to make war on Israel. Okay? So you have different interests. Israel is interested in an enduring peace with a peaceful neighbor, but Israel doesn't want to have a neighbor that is engaging in terrorism against Israeli citizens on a day-to-day basis.
Mm-hmm.
Who wants a neighbor like that? It's the same thing when you're living in the United States of America. If you have a hostile neighbor that is constantly causing problems next to you, you don't want that neighbor to live next to you.
Right.
Why would you?
So,
and a one-state solution for Israel would be a simple thing. Israel is in charge. The law is Israeli law. However, Israel is pluralistic and democratic and has representation for all. But the law is Israeli law, and that is what they cannot abide by. Israeli law involves values. Okay? It involves living on a certain set of values, and the Palestinians are not willing to live by their values because their mentality and their philosophy is completely a different philosophy and mentality.
Right. So then
you have a mentality that it's more important to wage war and involve yourself in terrorism rather than be productive, rather than educate yourself and be happy with that education. Israelis have different values. They hold to a higher standard. And this is the conflict in that regard.
Right. So then, do you think a one-state solution is even a possibility?
I would ask anybody.
Do I think a one-state solution is a possibility?
Yeah, that's right.
I think
no, that's an anathema.
Right.
That's not even a serious.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a serious proposal. No nation in existence dissolve itself.
Mm-hmm.
None.
So Ken, you are saying that it should be a two-state solution, or
not yourself, Alex, but for people that even this goes against the veil. What I would ask people, for those who actually think like that how could you safeguard Jews in a single nation state when you look around Israel's neighbors? We're not talking 10 or 20 or 100 people, or even 1,000. We're talking tens of thousands. And if they had the military capability, there'd be hundreds of thousands dead. You look in Egypt, you look in Syria, you look what happened in Iraq, you look at elsewhere, it's absolute butchery. And if the Arabs ever had the disadvantage in weaponry, that Israel, they would literally wipe Israel off the face of the map. And that's a fact.
See, that is the fact that's very important. How can you have a one-state solution in the favor of Palestinians when this is
it doesn't even work in
going
it doesn't
on?
even work in Europe. It doesn't even work in Europe. Look at Yugoslavia. You know, look at Belgium. Belgium. Two peoples slammed together. They have two different flags. You know, they have one flag, but they still have different allegiances, two different languages. It's unworkable, and yet try to force people together. It's just not a workable solution.
That is a very, very important point, Ken. You cannot force people to be together, and this is the major issue here. Again, an agreement might be made, but again, that agreement in the future will be breached time and time and again because it is not the essential goal of the Palestinians to just get a little bit of something to appease them. They want everything, and they will not stop until they get everything. Israel is willing to concede. It has shown that time and time and again. And in return for those concessions, Israel has received a terrorism in response on every front.
What do you think that Israel gained, or what would happen if they were to unilaterally just say like they did in Gaza and just leave Judea and Samaria, take up everything and just move inside Israel proper? Okay, what would happen? The
same thing would happen again.
Are you kidding me? You know,
the same thing would happen again until they receive everything. The point is the goal is not to just get a little part of land, Ken. The point is for them to have the entire area of Israel that it is located. They want the entire area. Their maps show that. They teach that in their schools. It is evident what they want. Their clerics talk about it. And even the rest of the Arab world talks about in support to destroy Israel.
Oh yeah, hey, listen. Just recently there was a video concerning the UNRWA classrooms, and the documentary was focused on whether or not the UNRWA curriculum talked about the destruction of the state, and all of them interviewed. They were actually sowing the seeds for hatred towards Israel and no recognition of. And
exactly, this is the different mentality that they're taught from childhood. This mentality, and Israeli schools do not teach this about them.
Yeah, from the documentary, one boy is interviewed, and he's saying they are, quote, the Jews are enemies, and I will liberate it with Allah's help. But they fought against Allah and became the enemy of Allah. We must kill all of them. This is what's being taught. This is the mentality. So how do you deal with an entity that is vying for your own destruction and thinking that you're going to have some type of peace agreement with them, and then you're going to end up being like Canadians? Are you kidding me? That's what Obama said, basically. Yeah, all we got to do is sign on the dotted line, get things going, and then you're going to have a neighbor just like the Canadians, like the U.S. has. Are you kidding?
Mm-hmm.
There is absolutely no response to what you just said, Ken, because, I mean, it's facts on the table. This is the reality. This is the issue that Israel is contending with. You are not dealing with a partner for peace. You're dealing with an enemy. And there has to be a limit on the part of Israel on how much they will take from this enemy. This enemy is not going to negotiate with Israel. It will never negotiate with Israel, and it will never, ever adhere to an enduring and long-term agreement with Israel. That is a fact. There is no denying it.
I mean, only the dreamers, or the utopian-minded folk who just can't, handle the reality of the situation. Say, well, something's got to be done. Something got to be done. No, nothing has to be done until the other side says. I'm not interested in warring against you anymore. I want on the other side. So you just have to wait. Hopefully one day the situation will happen.
Yes, everybody is hopeful, and Israel holds a policy always that it is looking for a partner that is willing to say, okay, we realize that we can't have what we're looking for, but we can have a different change for the betterment of the entire world. Remember, what happens in Israel affects the entire world. And if you look around the world, you can see that effect. Everybody has Israel under the microscope out of any other nation, and there are other nations that are suffering under terrorism. India is taking a terrible battle from terrorists in their country, in very many different regions of India. In Pakistan, the minorities, the religious minorities, are also suffering under oppression and also terrorism. So when you have a center of the world that is dealing with terrorism as Israel does on a daily basis, we acknowledge and we understand we are not alone. There are many other nations that are also enduring this suffering. And if we do not say no to terrorism, and if we continue to accept it as a part of our society, there will never be the changes that we want to see for an enduring peace. And that goes for the entire world.
Breaking news. Breaking news. Okay?
Yes.
The Prime Minister of Turkey, Erdogan, back on understandings with Netanyahu. Day after Israeli PM's apology phone call, Turkish leader says it's yet time to drop against the case against the 4 IDF generals over the markets and won't send a new envoy. He's going to Gaza to visit. So this is the capricious nature of these people.
Exactly. See, the thing is, so why did you apologize, Bibi Netanyahu? My question.
Yeah.
Why? Why apologize to an enemy who will not accept an apology?
Unreal.
And actually, why did you apologize to an enemy that you had no reason to apologize for? You are not the bully in this situation. Turkey was the bully in this situation. They came into our waters with hostile intentions. And we had to apologize to them. This is unheard of. And this is proof, this breaking news that you are sharing, Ken, is an example of what we deal with when Israel is dealing with Palestinian negotiations. This is their example of what a negotiation means. It's not any different than the rest of the Arab world who is against Israel.
So, what we're doing, right now they smell blood in the water, and you're just handing them on a silver platter, appetite for more. And I'm really disappointed in the approach.
Yes, it's a mistake. It is a clear mistake on the part of Netanyahu. I believe that he should have held a firm stance, and he should have said, look, we are tired of being in a situation where we have proven ourselves correct and being forced into submission time and time and again. This is historical with Israel. This has happened time and again. There has to come a time when we are right about a situation, and we are right about this situation for certain, that we should not have to be in a position where we have to apologize to an enemy who came to us with hostile intentions. It is up to them to be able to apologize to us for the years and years and years of rockets, the years and years and years of the Israeli lives claimed. When will they come and apologize for those losses? Israel has apologized for the mistakes that it has made. When Israel makes a mistake, one thing then, Israel acknowledges their mistakes. And they also go to the table and they say, we have made a mistake and we want to do what we can to correct it. But we don't see that on the other side. We don't see that effort on the other side of the enemy.
Yep. What happens when you demand from them, for example, Turkey to apologize for the massacre and genocide of Armenians? Or
exactly
even in modern history, their fight with the Kurds, and not all their missiles hit the intended targets, and there are women and children killed. Is there any apology forthcoming? No. So I mean, that's the mindset we're in. It's pretty cool.
And I do find it very disheartening and extremely disappointing that Israel is forced into a position where it must always be under the microscope and always must be the one that is the first. It shows a higher standard on the part of Israel, and we applaud our abilities to have a higher standard and be the first to come in the interest of peace. That is an important thing. That I will say. However, it comes a time when you're dealing with an enemy who is never going to accept your apology and who is never going to be a willing partner for peace. But there has to be a limit. There has to be a limit.
Well, anyways, listen, I have to be going. It's been an hour. So I appreciate
an honor and pleasure as usual, Ken.
Yeah, thank you. Same here. And I'm a little bit disappointed in Felix. Felix, where are you?
Yeah. I told you, we do our best to schedule. We can't make the people show up, but we'll have some more conversations tomorrow if you're around and you want to just jump into one of them.
Okay.
Yes, thank you, Alex, for hosting, and see you later, Ken.
Okay, take care.
Good speaking with you guys. Thank you.
Take care. Bye, everyone. Bye.
Bye.